Hey everyone, back again, and it is that time of the year. It's DOScember, and yeah, all the YouTubers get together and do some DOS projects, and this is mine. It's a case at the moment, but yeah, I need to put some parts into it, and I've been collecting a few bits and pieces over the years, so yeah, I'm doing another build. This project is going to be a sort of 386 build. I haven't had a 386 machine before. The last time I used one was probably, must have been high school. The offcasts from the old computer labs and things ended up in the back of my science classroom, and yeah, I got to play with them there. But that was 2004 or 5, so yeah, it's been a while, and I've been meaning to try and pick a motherboard up and, you know, do a build with one, but, you know, they're getting a bit expensive these days. But yeah, I'll get into that more later, but for now we've got to sort of assemble this case, which I've had sort of sitting around in storage for quite a few years actually. This has been one of the most sort of in-depth builds that I've done yet, so it's going to be a bit of a long one, so, you know, grab a drink or whatever you guys have got going and kind of sit back and enjoy the project. Well, after getting the case hinge clips put back in place, I moved on to the task which I had been dreading, which is getting the power supply fitted. So this case must be for like a AT, well, it's not an AT style case, but like an XT or something equivalent. It's got a date code of like 93 on the back there. Yeah, it didn't fit, apart from the motherboard, it didn't fit any power supplies or standard, you know, AT or ATX power supplies. So I had to do a bit of quote-unquote fabrication to make that all work, which I'll show here later. And this sort of made the project quite a bit more challenging and, well, for me a bit more interesting, because I actually had to do some work to make it all fit. So I borrowed some tools from my flatmate Reuben, and yeah, we did some work on the back panel. Thankfully it unscrews. So here's the issue. You can see here that the jug cord, or the IEC port, or whatever you want to call it, is too far down to fit between the gap, and also the screw holes do not line up with the back panel. So very frustrating, and that's why this case has been sitting around for 2 to 3 years, because it's going to require quite a bit of work to make it all fit, but I've sort of had it in reserve ready to go for a build such as this. So what I'm doing is trying to line up the screw holes with the ATX power supply that I want to use for this build. So I'm using a cotton bud with some Loctite on it, so it doesn't sort of evaporate and it leaves the markings on the back of the panel. Really great idea in theory until you don't line things up quite right, but nothing that a file can't sort out there. So to get started with drilling the holes out for the power supply, you have to sort of use a tap sort of thing, or punch, sorry, that's what it's called. You can tell I'm really good with my tools here. Yeah, just to help guide and seat the drill piece in. It was a bit of a project, as I said, to get this all to work, but we'll mark out the 4 holes that I need, and then Reuben here is helping me hold the piece because his vise is a bit broken while I drill out the holes.
Oh, yeah. I told you it would grab.
Yeah.
How much further we got? It's probably blunt as heck then. Oh, you're going backwards.
Oh shit, I am too. What an idiot.
Oh. knocks those big chunks off.
Yeah, so after drilling the correct way around, it's just a matter of filing down some of the burrs and things like that, and to help massage the screw holes to line up. So next is sort of the bigger job, which was making sure that we could fit the power supply in between that hole where Reuben's thumb was, sort of in the left there where the power cord goes in. So for that, we got out the big tools. Yes, I did use ear and eye protection on that one. It makes an awful racket. But yeah, save you guys having to listen to the filing here because it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. It just needed a bit more massaging in order to get the power supply to fit sort of properly in there. I ended up using a combination of washers as well to try and space those out. There was one thing that I forgot to do, which I'll get to later, which was mounting a power switch because I am using an ATX power supply. But anyway, there's nothing that another punch can't sort out, and a large drill piece, but we're going to just do a sort of a mock fit here to make sure it all lines up. The case itself was very frustrating to work with. It's hinged, instead of the whole lid just coming off, so it means my arm kept getting trapped in the lid whilst mounting the power supply. Very annoying, very sore. I've still got marks on my wrists from that, but anyway, could be worse. But yeah, you just sort of have to hold your hand in there in order to mount the power supply to the backing plate. I ended up having to sort of take this power supply in and out a few times as I was fitting various components into the case, such as the motherboard and memory, and also the power connector for the motherboard. Speaking of the motherboard, I found this one on Trade Me, a local sort of Craigslist type thing. This motherboard is an Elite Group US 3486. It's kind of an interesting one. It's one of those hybrid boards that supposedly supports a 486 and 386 CPU, but as you can see, mine is missing the 486 functionality. I kind of picked this one up for two reasons. One, it was kind of cheap. It was about $75 US untested, but the other reason was it doesn't use a Vata battery, so it won't leak everywhere. It also came with a 33 MHz 386 CPU, which is very handy because I don't have any of those, and it's using the UMC chipset. It supports a maximum of 32 megabytes of memory as well, which is quite a sizable amount for a 386 or even a 486, to be honest. It came pre-populated as well with 4 megabytes. As you can see, no battery damage there on the header, and I picked up the jumper user / manual, even though it was 2 pages from the Retro Web project. I'll link that in the description. Alright, next task is to get rid of the tantalum capacitors. I mean, they don't leak, and you know, they normally can be pretty good. I've had a few explode on me before, and so I kind of want to just get rid of them as a precautionary thing, just because when they explode, you know, you can't read the values off them because the tops of them are ripped off. So what I've doing there was marking the capacitor locations with a permanent marker just to sort of show me where I need to go, so I'm not hunting around the board. and I'm pre-tinning the leads of the existing capacitors, and this will just help removal of the existing ones, because lead free versus leaded solder, so yeah, just helps there with getting rid of those. And now I get to break out my new favorite tool, which is the desoldering gun. Man, this thing is awesome. I'm still getting the hang of how the tool works and, how to best practice it, sort of thing. But, I guess I learn by doing, so a few of these projects and I think I should be pretty good. Definitely learned that pre-tinning, whatever you're trying to remove, helps, and giving it a good wiggle. Of course, not putting force on the board. It's a bit unruly, this one, because it's a bit top heavy, but, that's alright. But yeah, I'm doing these one at a time, and the reason I'm doing that is because recently I blew a power supply up inside of a laptop because I got the wrong voltages on the caps mixed up, and yeah, blew the tops off them. So you guys might see that it was sort of a failed repair, but I'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm doing these one at a time, and I had an interesting issue as well because I don't trust some of the silkscreen markings. 2 capacitors were marked incorrectly on the silkscreen for the grounding. Quite important with polarity for electrolytics. I don't think it matters so much for the ceramic sort of tantalum ones, but I could be wrong on that, but yeah, they were marked sort of incorrectly, so I toned them out with my multimeter and carried on. One of those jobs that you do sort of while you're there is I sort of reflowed the connections for the power connector and the keyboard, just because of the stresses they go under when, components are being pulled in and out and things like that. I just wanted to make sure there was no breaks in there. I don't think it was necessary, but you never know, so I thought, I've got the gun soldering iron out, sorry, might as well just do it. Well, after putting everything in place, it's time to cut the leads off all the components. That's actually quite an enjoyable part for me. I actually went over everything and double checked the polarity with my multimeter just to make sure that I didn't miss anything like that. It can be quite important unless you like exploding capacitors. But yeah, it all checked out fine, which was good. And I thought what I'll do is also, because I've got all the tools out, is build some voltage blasters. It turns out the power supply I was using didn't require these, but basically it provides a negative 5 volt rail from your negative 12 volt rail, because modern power supplies do not provide that anymore, especially if you're using an ATX to AT adapter. So I figured, why not build these up? I haven't built any PCBs before. So I've linked this in the description. Phil's Computer Lab and Necroware, the project teamed up and developed this. And yeah, it was a very simple process. I sort of followed the same instructions that those guys did and got them all printed out. And yeah, within 2 weeks they were here. I ended up choosing the black PCB for all of these just because I thought it looked really cool, having the white text on the black, background, really sharp, classy looking. Oh, yeah. And I built a few of these up. It's quite fun actually being able to put something together like this rather than having to, take something apart. I don't have to get the desoldering gun out. But yeah, as I said, the power supply ended up picking for the project, had a negative 5 volt rail on it anyway, so these were a bit redundant, but hey, I've got them in stock, and I've got a few other boards and things that could use them. So why not make them up? And plus, if anyone needs one in New Zealand, I've got a few PCBs kicking around. But yeah, a lot of fun to build, and thanks to those guys for developing this and releasing it to the community. It's good stuff, and everyone benefits from it, so shout out to them. Alright, I've put it off long enough. I've cleared the stuff off my desk after building these little voltage blasters, but I think it's time we test out the motherboard and actually see if the untested unit works. Yeah, I let out a pretty big sigh of relief when I saw the motherboard actually posted. At this point, you never quite know with untested parts. So yeah, with that, I'll carry on with the project. And yeah, I forgot to drill out a hole for the power switch. When you're using an ATX to AT power supply sort of adapter, you need a power switch in order to activate the PSU to turn on. So when I was last in Christchurch out of town, I picked up some switches from JCar. I'm not sure if these require some sort of like bump capacitor or something on the switch to help prevent them burning out. I'm not an electrical guy, but anyway, I'm pretty sure it's low voltage stuff for this one, so I just mounted a plain power switch up. I think this one supports like 5 or 10 amps or something, I read off the back of it, so it should be alright, I think. I think that's what it said. But yeah, so I'll just tin the leads of the switch and we'll mount the adapter cables to it. I thought about just pushing the terminals on, but I didn't want them coming loose, so I actually removed the terminals from the cables. You can see them here, and I'm just going to solder the wires directly to the switch just to make sure they don't pop off. Yeah, I know I don't have a proper heat shrink melting tool, so I'm just using a candlestick sort of thing there, but there's the adapter anyway, all mounted up. I would have shown more footage of mounting the motherboard into the case, but the reality is I had to use a number of different standoffs and put some rubber feet under the case in order to get the board to sit level. It took about 40 minutes to an hour to make that kind of all work, so I didn't want to show all of that. And yeah, as you can see, it's kind of a pain to get the power supply and you have to kind of lean over it. The lid of the case is crushing my wrist, but that's how it goes with old computers. Just throwing a couple of zip ties on the mess of cables that I'm not using, and I can easily just sort of tuck those away underneath the floppy disk drive. Quite handy place to keep the cables for storage, which is good because this case ended up feeling a little bit crammed to work in. Yeah, I don't know what it was. I haven't worked with many cases in this sort of form factor for quite a number of years actually. I've always kind of had towers, so yeah, anyway, new challenges. Headers went on pretty good, didn't have too many troubles with them, managed to keep it all nice and tidy as well. For storage, I had the choice of two options, this 545 megabyte version from Seagate and a Maxtor drive, which was about 120 megabytes, 120. I initially tried the 540 drive here because I thought a bit more storage would be good. But of course, with the 386 sort of era machines, there's no hard drive auto detection, so you have to kind of set your cylinders and heads and stuff manually by either the labels that are often on the drives, which these two that I had did not have them printed out, which is rather annoying, or you have to find them online. The second option that I went with, well, for the secondary drive, is a compact flash to IDE adapter. I really wanted to have the ability to take stuff off and on the machine, just because I don't have a CD-ROM drive fitted or a network card, and this is just the next best thing really. I/O is handled via this sort of Acer-inspired MIO-400 multi-controller. It's a 16-bit card, and I'm just wiring up the front header LED for the hard drive activity. And I learned that you have to kind of put the ribbon cables on for the drives first before mounting the card in, because it's really hard to get them in while the card is sort of mounted into the machine. But yeah, anyway, I had a few issues with that drive, and I think it was the settings I was putting in. I know that hard drive works, so I ended up going for this Maxtor unit made in 1992, April. My god, I'm surprised it still works, to be honest, but it's a little bit quieter than the Seagate drive. It makes a nice sort of little hum. It makes a little nice chirping noise, which you guys will hear soon. But yeah, it works good as gold. Actually, both of these still work, and it's amazing considering how old they are and how long I've had them just sitting around in a box. But yeah, not happy with the mounting system, but I'm assuming that will be fine. It still works until it eats itself apart, but yeah, get it plugged in and configured and give it a test really, I reckon. I also added a compact flash card as well, which is about 1GB in size, far too large and isn't supported by this board, but I just halved my cylinder count. Hopefully that's good enough to work. I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do, but it detected a 512 meg partition, so yeah, makes getting games onto the machine a lot easier. Yeah, making all the correct sounds is what you want to hear out of a 386. So because I don't have a BIOS battery installed or anything like that to keep the settings, when you turn it off all of this gets lost, you have to reset it in, but here's all my cylinders and heads and things like that I had to set up for the drives. And there's this tool I found on a Vogon's link, which I've put in the description as well, for a tool called IDEinfo. You set your drives as not installed, then run this tool from a DOS boot disk. Makes it very handy, and it tells you all your settings. At this point now, it's pretty much just formatting the hard drive and installing MS-DOS. It's a pretty standard affair, really. I ended up going with DOS 6.22, and I thought, yeah, that should be good enough. And the formatting of the drive, even though it's only 120 megabytes, you'll see here from the timer when I sort of started the recording, yeah, it takes a while to get through it. It's slow. But you know what, it gets there in the end, and I'm surprised honestly that the drive still works, so yeah. So after a few brisk minutes, it's pretty much just carry on with the setup as usual. Sorry for the screen changes here. I had a hell of a time trying to get this footage captured. It was really painful because of this type of video card. It just looked terrible no matter what I did. Couldn't make it look good, so yeah, we'll just ignore that and carry on. Just feed the 3 floppy disks in, and then we've got MS-DOS 6.22 installed. I'm not sure if this is probably correct for such a machine. I'll have to let you guys tell me if 6.22 was the way to go. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much just going through and setting up MS-DOS as kind of like per that supplemental guide that I did a couple of months ago, where I set up a MS-DOS installation. One of my go-tos is the DOS key interpreter, because you can tab out commands and things like that. So yeah, after a reboot of AutoExec BAT, it all worked out, and I did a scan disk as well on the hard drive just to make sure there was no bad sectors. Once again, apologies for the terrible gel bars and video quality. It was just, as I said, a nightmare to get this recorded. So moving on, I thought 4 megabytes of RAM is a bit paltry, so why not add another 4? The same guy I got this motherboard off, I got 2 others from as well for future projects, and it had these little memory modules already installed on one of them. So yeah, I took all 4 off, and now we've got 8 megabytes of RAM, and those checked out as well, which I was super happy to see that there was no dead memory. Moving on to sound, I pillaged parts from a parts machine. I'm starting to get low. This is actually my last ISA based sound card. Yes, it's a Vibra 16, but it's good enough for this machine. It doesn't need to be too fancy. But yeah, other than that, it works a treat, so that's always handy. And now for the jobs I've been putting off, which is cleaning the case. This is very marked up. It's got a lot of scratches and dents and things like that over it. So I just used the glass cleaner to get it started. Very good place to start. It takes a lot of the grime and stuff off the case and plastics. So glass cleaner is definitely a good option to begin with. I was kind of hoping the CRC stuff would loosen the sticky tape off one of those 5-inch drive bay covers, but it didn't work, so we went for classic, which was just the magic eraser sponge here, and yeah, took it off. There's still a tiny little bit left, but it looks a lot better than what it did before. And I just went around the rest of the case with this as well, just over any marks and stuff to try and remove them. It can remove textured material, so yeah, just be sort of careful when using the magic eraser sponge. Next up, my colleague gave me some of these rainbow coloured pin header cable things. Really handy for stuff like this because I wanted to route the PC speaker sound in through the sound card, so I could capture the audio and put my headphones on and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the last hardware item to wrap up. It all went very easily considering, and I think it's time we crack into some games and see how the machine runs.
Into the wonderful. Into
Every now and then you'll hear kind of this beeping sound. It's from the keyboard. For some reason, I'm not sure if anyone else has had this issue, but with this particular game, it would be like a key would get stuck, and you can see here that I'm just going right, and you can't move the player, and then when you respawn, you keep going right, and then all of a sudden it will kind of just stop, and then allow you to kind of move around. And then I had a lot of trouble exiting the game as well because the key wouldn't work. So yeah, a bit of a strange one. I think I might try a joystick or something on this one next time. This has to be one of my new favourite games. It's called Riptide. And, you know, you go around, you got to shoot the enemies and stuff in your submarine, but you got your little co-submarine called Jason, I think his name is. You got to go around and pick up items and open doors up and stuff that your bigger submarine can't fit through. But yeah, a lot of fun playing this one. Yeah, at the end of each level you get a password as well. It's kind of neat to throw in. Well, that wraps up my DOScember build on this one, the first ever 386 machine that I have built and owned. So it's been a long time since I've used one, as I said, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun putting this one together. It was a bit more involved with my usual projects and builds, but that's the way it goes. But yeah, with that, I'll catch you guys probably in the new year with some more projects and things like that. Hope everyone keeps safe and well over the holiday season as well. And big shout out to Reuben, my flatmate. He's got a YouTube channel which I'll link in the description if you're into Subarus and car content. He does a lot of that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Catch you guys soon.